and I myself am Ninnies. All right, and we've started. So if this is your first time here, watching a No Major Glitches tournament, if this is your first time to Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past at all, what we got to do here is the escape segment. So we got to get through here, we got to go pick up Zelda, and we got to get out of the castle in one piece. Both which should be not a problem to both these runners. They're both high caliber runners. BluntBunny himself just PB'd recently with a 1:24.15, and Gesellschaft, I believe, has a 1:30.05. She's on the cusp of getting that sub 90 here. All right, so we got the sword from our uncle. Unfortunately, he can't continue. There's a lot of theories why he can't continue, you know, but I like to think that his hero days are over, you know? I mean, there's only so much that you can call upon your uncle to save a kingdom over and over. Coming up here on our first key guard here. There's two key guards in this this segment, both of which we're going to take care with some kind of spin combination. A little bit of trouble there from Gesellschaft, but manages to get that key rather quickly. Not really that difficult, but it just depends on whether or not if the blue guard decides to get that sword in a bad placement. That way you'll ping that sword back and forth and parry it.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I was having some mic issues.
Hey, there you are, Elm.
How's it going?
Fantastic. We just started.
Alright, so they're both doing a similar thing with this guard with the key. Poking it and then hitting it with the spin attack right after the poke.
Yeah, the blue boomerang is really nice tech here that we get to use in No Major Glitches. There's only a couple of runs where we don't pick it up, low percent and 100%, although we do get a boomerang later in 100%, but utilizing the boomerang here can save a lot of time over the other categories dependent on RNG. It just allows you to move less away from the object that you need, and it can start to bring things towards you, like small keys, big keys, hearts if you need them.
Yeah, so both of these runners went for the 8/ strat on the ball and chain guard, which is a little bit faster than using a pot, which would save 4 slashes. Gesellschaft, unfortunately, had slight issues with it. Didn't pick up the big key, so accidentally got the text from the door, which is setting her behind a little bit.
Yeah, the good news is that there's a lot of heart pots on the way. There's one that's going to be just after you push push that little throne out of the way, but there's also 2 that are in the green guard room that we kind of pass by in order to get to here. So we'll see if Giselle wants to go ahead and pick those up before continuing on.
Yeah, it might be worthwhile. Oh, she did just get poked by the guard in the map room, so it'd be a large time loss to die here because your save and quit point becomes Zelda's cell once you rescue her.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. There's a couple of different checkpoints in here, and this is really unique among the game. Really, there's only checkpoints at dungeon entrances, but here, depending on how far you got into the segment, it will spawn you a different spot. So before they get to push the shelf here, after you get past that, then you'll respawn here in this throne room if you die.
Yeah, so they don't need too much in the way of hearts here, although Blunt is picking up this heart pot That's actually a little bit interesting because I believe it suggests he's going to be skipping the Sanctuary Heart. The Sanctuary Heart is a full container and is one of the most grab safeties in the game. But like very, very top end runners, like top 10 runners like BluntBunny, will skip it in their runs and even races for 3 to 4 second save.
Yeah, it's not a bad time save to get by skipping it, but it's definitely a high caliber mark. You know, being able to control Link at that skill level with one less heart, and you really feel the difference around like Palace of Darkness and like the early Dark World dungeons, not having that additional heart there to help kind of bridge a little bit of that safety. Death Mountain also really early in the run, it's really dangerous too because depending on how mean the cabbages want to be on that mountain.
Yeah, both runners got pretty bad luck with the rat key, went all the way to the northwest. And when that happens, it can be tough to grab the key with the boomerang because sometimes the key can be partially inside the wall when you throw it.
Oh yeah, I mean that's always like the worst thing to kind of see in that, and it's still possible to get a sub 6 with that, but it definitely eats away a lot of time because everything that we do in this run, we try to eliminate moving the opposite direction of where we want to go, and that's where the boomerang kind of comes into play as well, especially in like this early segment. But later on in the run, you'll see kind of like ways that we slash enemies and ways that we throw pots and stuff like that to pretty much help give us distance and give us attack range for where we want to hit but not move to.
So Gesellschaft coming out of the escape. Neither of these runners got a sub 6 escape, which I imagine they're not too happy with, but there are bigger time losses to worry about later in the run. But coming out of the escape, she did get the Sanctuary Heart. She also did a chest turn off of the chest, and that is a silly little frame saver. Basically, when you open a chest, you have one frame to input something else, and if you do it correctly, you'll actually save a frame of movement. The chest turns that go downwards are probably the most difficult because you have to do a complete 180 on the D-pad.
Yeah, there's ones that are really beneficial, like in Thieves Town when you pick up the big key, if you can chest turn to the right, and that way you can start your dash immediately after getting rid of that big key chest, the big key chest text dialogue. That was a little tough to say. So here we are in Eastern, the first dungeon that we got to do, Home of the Bow, and I don't know. There's really not a lot to say about this one, but this is kind of like a fun dungeon to learn once you get like the tricks down to it. Taking care of the skeleton room really early, and also doing the big key skip here.
Yeah, we'll see BluntBunny tackle the skeleton room right now. And do you want to explain how that works?
All right, so there are 4 skeletons in this room, and there's a trigger on that floor. It's a kind of a U-shaped trigger where when you kind of go down towards that center pot, it's gonna drop the skeletons. What we're doing here is that the sprites are actually there, they're just hidden. So we're taking care of the 2 sprites that are on screen that don't drop, and we're getting rid of them before the other ones do, and that will also allow the door to trigger and open up. It's pretty cool. It saves a lot of time, and you know, who doesn't like speed tricks that you have to, you know, explain to new people that are coming in and like, oh man, what happened? What did he kill?
Yeah, it's something that you always see new people to the speedrun watch one, and they go like, what? I thought there were 4 skeletons in that room, and there was only 2. So both runners, actually BluntBunny coming up on the big key, I guess damage boost to avoid having to kill all the enemies in this room. In the room, a couple rooms prior when they grabbed the key, they both threw the boomerang towards the key for a tiny frame save.
Ooh, Giselle getting that 20 drop, but choosing not to go to get it. Usually you won't see anybody kind of go for rupees, but that 20 drop, you'll actually, a lot of runners will opt to go pick it up. It'll lose it a little bit of time, but it kind of gives you that the insurance. You know, the insurance that you know that you're going to get the rupees that you need along your rupee route.
Yeah, rupees are like a little bit significant because like later in the run we'll be doing some kill count manipulation to get certain denominations of rupees from the pole trees around the Lost Woods, and that's going to get the 110 to finance entering Palace of Darkness once we reach the Dark World. The significance of this 20 is that it can let you avoid having to pick up some of the rupees on the ground from the first tree pull. Save a bit of time in movement later.
Yeah, I mean, what you're looking for is like if you get super lucky and you're able to get about 30 rupees before you're going to be pulling that red rupees out of the tree in the Lost Woods, then you can pretty much skip almost all of the blue rupees, but you still have to pull the first tree. The next tier does not reset until you actually kind of get paid off of that first pull.
Yeah, well, we can talk more about that later, but both runners pulling off a very nice Armos Knights fight. Both going for the top right strat, which is pretty standard these days. It's a little bit faster than the bottom right strat that we would see a lot of new runners do, but it's also not too difficult. Also, they're since they have the Pendant of Courage now, they can both get the Pegasus boots from Sahasrara, which are required to proceed in the game, but you also see BluntBunny doing a very neat trick with that called Super Speed. There are a few ways to activate Super Speed, but the method used here is if you press the dash button 1 frame after releasing a spin attack, the game thinks that you're still in a dashing state even when you're not. So when you come off stairs, you gain the ability to walk at dash speed, which you'll see it several times throughout the run. It's a pretty neat trick. Definitely a good dosage of it throughout the run.
Yeah, it's important that you come off the stairs at a cardinal up or down. You can't leave the stairs like facing left. Well, you can leave facing left or right, but you have to have a up or down input. And then when you're trying to get in the state, it's important not to hold left or right when you're trying to get into it, because when you press A to, to get yourself in that 1 frame, Link will actually grab the wall and it won't put him in that state.
Yeah, it's very important that you don't just press A, but that your A press actually does a dash input. Very nice spin speeds from both of them on the library screen. They save pretty minimal amount of time there, but like it's kind of risky in some situations because if you miss a spin speed, it's frame perfect, and you might end up losing all the time that you stood to save from it and more.
Yeah, specifically during that second or that library segment, doing the dash strat to go through there versus doing the spin speed strat. If you mess up the spin speed strat or you don't get into the library quick, you're pretty much losing any time that you would gain off of just going through there and dashing normally.
BluntBunny doing a poke dash through the first antline in Desert Palace. I know those have another name, a Japanese name. I don't remember what it is. But you want to get through it without getting tripped up by the sand.
Yeah, one of the things that you kind of have to run into is making sure that you cancel your dash. Otherwise, you're just going to dash right into the northward room.
Yeah, you need to be, ideally, to play optimally, you need to be pretty precise with your movement. There's some instances where if you dash for slightly too long, you'll bonk, or hit an enemy like some of it is minor time losses, but sometimes things can go easily pretty wrong. Gesellschaft getting bad cannonball RNG, not really reacting to it correctly.
Yeah, she responded really well to the first one, but I think what she was trying to hope for is the timing, being able to just dash from that chest and go straight back down. But yeah, it's always a lot of little things.
If you aren't able to pass the first set of cannonballs, then you have to wait a little bit before dashing to pass the second set.
BluntBunny doing a more advanced strat there, utilizing that spin speed. It's a lot difficult, and they actually utilize that pause buffer to go to the lamp, so that way they don't accidentally run off the ledge. The problem with that is if you run off that ledge, you have to go all the way back into the entrance of it. Gesellschaft taking the opposite route of that, still buffering, but making sure that she didn't run off that cliff.
I find that kind of silly because it's like you're sacrificing some of the time that you save from doing the trick, just because you don't want to take the risk of course you don't want to jump the ledge. And the thing about jumping the ledge is that because the game thinks you're in a dash state, if you were to dash off a ledge, the game auto hops you without you having to do another input, or normally you have to hold against the edge for 20 frames. So the dash state skips that, which is why it's so dangerous.
Yeah, you can do stuff like quick hops, and that's pretty much what happens, facing down, left, or right. But for some reason, facing north, you can't do a quick hop off unless you actually change Link's facing direction. So later on in the run, you'll probably see BluntBunny, maybe Gesellschaft, utilizing this. They'll do a quick turn of Link, and he'll hop off, but he'll hop off the ledge going up, but he'll be facing left or right.
Alright, so this Land Mollusk fight, the toughest fight in the light world, I will say, by far.
Definitely the most annoying.
Yeah, you want to shoot 4 arrows into each one. They take 8 sword slashes each, but arrows kill them much faster. Problem is, arrows are pretty tough to hit because they have small hitboxes, and you can only have 1 arrow on screen at a time, so you have to be really sure with your aim. I think Gesellschaft's fight was actually a little bit better. I saw she got all 4 arrows into one of the Land Mollusks that was actually traveling northwest. So it was not a terribly easy pattern to track. Some patterns are easier than others. So if you see a Land Mollusk going vertically, it's quite easy to follow. You just shoot straight at it. But if it's going like horizontally or diagonally, it's much more difficult.
Yeah, you saw both BluntBunny and Gesellschaft utilize that short hop off that ledge. What that does is it puts Link in a spot where he can basically dash through that area without getting hit by the cacti. If you just jump off that ledge, you have to readjust Link, but from the spot where they dash, they nudge that rock, and Link will only do a small dash. But more importantly, Gesellschaft did a more advanced and pixel-perfect dash against those 2 cactuses there. Really risky, but definitely swaggy.
Yeah, I know she really likes the cactus dash, and not really because of the time that it in particular saves. It's a frame perfect, it's our pixel perfect dash, I believe, which means you have to kind of stop your dash frame perfectly to set it up. But it's kind of, it's sort of maybe a metaphor, not really a metaphor, but it represents kind of, you need to not be so fearful of bonking or overshooting things throughout the run, otherwise you're always going to undershoot them. So that's why she practices that a lot.
Oh, 100%, I concur with that statement. The fact that, you know, you're able to do certain things and to also show them off during a run, especially a high caliber run like this, like doing runs back to back and stuff like that, that's really tough. But in a tournament setting, it's more stressful. So being able to pull off that trick and do it reliably and stuff like that, especially in a high pressure situation, shows the amount of skill and practice that these runners have.
Yeah, there's a lot of thought put into the strategies for this game as well. So BluntBunny, we saw him do a quick hop off of Spectacle Rock, and he made sure that he was facing northwest. Gesell doing it as well. But you have to make sure for north-facing ledges that you're facing diagonally. So you have to do some diagonal movement prior to hitting the ledge. Otherwise, you'll face north and you'll grab the ledge every time and it won't work. That particular one is really tough to pull off, I find. There are others in the run that are easier. I also see them both doing the strat affectionately known as the coffee rake. Being stuck inside the pegs as they form grants them invincibility frames repeatedly every time they run out on Link. The pegs will grant them again, and this lets them just sit here and do nothing in the room. To hit the crystal switch, they did what's called an item dash, which is using an item and dashing on the same frame. This has different effects with various items. It is frame perfect. It's also Japanese 1.0 exclusive glitch. It's used a lot more with the hammer later on in the run. We'll be seeing quite a bit of it.
Yeah, it'll also be used a lot with the hook shot in order to get us into that spin speed more reliably. They won't have to hold their sword out, they won't have to charge it and release the spin and get that one frame after input. They'll just have to do a quick item dash with the with that hook shot, and then they're in spin speed. But more importantly is that item dash with the boomerang is a little bit more difficult to do, because not only do you have to get that same frame input, but you also have to get the direction input at the same time. And doing a diagonal boom while you're also trying to line yourself up and get that item dash, very difficult. We get to see our first use of bomb jumps here, utilizing a bomb to damage boost Link across the edge. And BluntBunny and Gesell were both utilizing the more advanced version of it, even more demonstrating their skill at this game, getting in that pixel perfect spot in order to damage boost over. You'll see a lot of other runners will also bonk over there, and that increases the space at which you'll get hit by a lot more. I think it's up to about like 6 pixels. So if you're learning it, it's a lot easier to do the bonk strat. You don't lose all that much time over just placing the bomb and getting yourself into an optimum position. All right, beautiful fight from both BluntBunny and Gesell on this this horrible boss. I think I don't like Moldorm more than I think I'd like Landmost more than I like Moldorm, at least at this moment. Moldorm's been very mean to me as of late, but the genuine idea about Moldorm is that you want to hit only the tail. Everything else, especially the head, is going to knock you back. And if you fall, especially if you fall in the middle hole, you're going to lose a lot of time. But if you fall at all, it resets Moldorm's health to full. Really badly is you can actually defeat the boss 100% and then fall, and you have to do the boss all over again.
Yeah, the bosses do not actually despawn permanently until you picked up the heart container. So if you were to pick up the heart container and then walk off, you would be able to come back and see the pendant waiting for you. It's also the reason that the bosses in Ganon's Tower will respawn infinitely. If you die in the Ganon's Tower climb, you'll have to refight Landmost, because it does not drop a heart, so it does not have a way to disappear permanently.
All right, so unfortunately, Gesell took some damage here, so she's going to pull this tree and it's going to be blue rupees, but there is a number of backups along the way. So there's another tree that you can pull on the Hyrule Courtyard, but she still has to do 4 kills without taking damage to get that top tier tree pull. So going into a little bit more detail about the rupee pools, if if you're not, or if you're familiar with this run, you probably already know what's going on. But for those of you that do not know, there are 3 tiers of this rupee pool. Is killing nobody or killing 1 enemy, or actually it's less than 4 enemies. Sorry, less than 4 enemies. It's a green rupee pool, which is tier 1. Tier 2 is killing 4 enemies, and then, you know, just it doesn't matter whether you took damage or not, and that will give you the blue rupees. And last but not least is the killing 4 enemies taking no damage will get you those red rupees. So there's that pool that she's resetting. So she needs to get 4 kills without taking any damage. Does not matter if her health is full. She just has to meet those requirements, and she can pull this tree in the courtyard.
Yeah, you want to kill the guard that she just passed as the backup for here, but sometimes you're not aligned correctly and it doesn't happen. She's going to kill this blue guard. If you miss that green guard I mentioned, then you want to kill one of the blue guards in the courtyard for the Hyrule Castle entrance. So she's going to do that, and then she's going to pull this tree over here. Taking care to not get hit again before she manages to pull it, that was a bit dicey.
Yeah, a lot of runners, if they've messed it up, they'll hold the sword out and they'll do a sword spin there, and then usually those blue guards will drop a heart, and that's what I thought she was going to do to try to get herself back up to sword beams.
Yeah, the heart is nice to have sword beams here. We saw BluntBunny do a strategy in the 3rd room of Aghanim's Tower, using sword beams, and then a dash kill on the 2 blue guards with the fancy armor. And those blue guards are in a particular prize pack that contains a lot of good stuff. Particularly the second thing it will drop is a fairy. So you want to avoid those enemies dropping any items, because we want to preserve the fairy for Turtle Rock, which has Pokies, which are also in that same prize pack.
Yeah, arguably the best prize pack in the game. It's got the fairy, then after that it's got a full magic refill, and then the top tier result out of that is an 8 bomb drop.
Yeah, so the dash kill is significant because enemies have a 0% chance of dropping anything when you kill them with the dash. And the way that the prize packs work is they don't advance to the next one in the queue until a previous prize is dropped. The next thing that we will kill from that prize pack is a Helmasaur in Palace of Darkness.
Yeah, that's the one that's going to give us our first drop out of that prize pack. Is the we're going to see a heart from there. But keep in mind, even though that you do manipulate this prize pack, it is still a 50-50 shot whether or not the drop is actually going to appear. So if our runners manipulate this and then they get themselves into Turtle Rock and still kill that Pokey, the first one, it's not guaranteed that it's going to drop the fairy, and there's a lot of different potential drops out of that Pokey. I mean, it's like each different piece has a potential to drop the prize pack item.
Yeah, so more often than not, if you still have that fairy available, you're likely to get it earlier in Turtle Rock rather than later, but it can really appear at any time.
Yeah, the best spot that we want to see is right before the Chain Chomp room, because one of the strategies that I'm pretty sure BluntBunny will do, but if Gesellschaft is practiced enough, we'll probably see it too. There's a roller room where you intentionally take damage, so that way you can damage boost through the second roller and get out of that room much faster. And it's a really difficult trick to kind of pull off, and it takes a lot of discipline as well, because you need to manage your health. Getting across the light world, which is yet another Death Mountain excursion, and you got to dodge all those rocks. You also have to dodge the dead rocks too. So a lot of factors kind of come into it, but there's always a backup strat to take a mirror and then just continue on with that dungeon. But we'll get more into that as soon as we get there. We're here at the Aghanim 1, and we're hoping for no blue balls, but it looks like BluntBunny has already gotten a couple, and Gesellschaft is just starting her first phase here with 2 blue balls already.
Yeah, so each attack Aghanim does is a 50% chance of either being a useful yellow ball or a useless blue ball, except for the first attack in the cycle, which is a guaranteed yellow ball, which limits the amount that this fight can drag on. And the 5th attack in each cycle is a lightning. You can always tell that either by counting or by seeing that he'll always face down and be at the top of the room on that 5th attack. The lightning strike means that, for instance, 3 blue balls is significantly more of a time loss than 2, and 7 is significantly more of a time loss than 6, and so on. And we see BluntBunny taking the middle path down the pyramid to get a spin speed off of those stairs. It's only faster to go down the middle if you get that spin speed, so it's another one of those strats that is, like, the top players will go for all the spin speeds all the time, pretty much, but some of them are riskier than others, as I said earlier.
Yeah, we keep talking about like spin speed and how to get into it, and like it may sound daunting, but it's actually something that is not all that difficult to do. It takes a little bit of practice to get the motion down, but more than often than not, you can just take your thumb and just go straight from the B button to the A button, just kind of slide it over, and you'll be in that state more often than not. The best way to test if you're in it is by hitting the B button to slash a sword. You won't be able to if you are in that state.
Yeah, that's a really good way to tell if you aren't sure if you got it or not. So BluntBunny is in what I like to call Mirror Palace, but it's actually called Palace of Darkness.
Oh yeah, you obviously mirror an insane amount here to get around this dungeon. It's big, there's a lot of routes that we go, and to get right back on track, there's a lot of like additional movement that we would rather not do.
Yeah, and the nice thing about mirroring so much is actually that there are these free bomb pots at the start of Palace of Darkness, which will pretty much give you the bombs you need for the rest of the run, more or less.
So Palace of Darkness has a really fun trick in it called the Hammer Jump. BluntBunny himself here has a really good tutorial on how to do it, but it is a double pixel perfect jump that knocks you across the floor. And if you're familiar with the bomb jump that they did in Hera, they're doing a modified version of it. They're still trying to get themselves in the right position where they can get blown over to it, but we're adding a little more to it. There's a perfect pixel that the first bomb drop needs to be on. And second, there's a pixel perfect where Link needs to be on. There's a lot of different ways that our runners do visually to make sure they are on the right track, right pixel more often than not. There is a white circle that image that exists out there that you can kind of look at the side of the wall and make sure that you're there. You can also use Link shadows. You can use the ground that the bomb is placed on. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but it sounds daunting, but with practice, it's not that difficult to pull off in a run.
Yeah, pretty much everything just takes practice and experience getting comfortable with it. BluntBunny did the hammer jump very nicely. I don't think he had any extra buffers. Wasn't quite paying attention. But the other aspect of the hammer jump that is scary is having to deal with the crumbling bridge at the same time. So you really can't take too long setting this up. Even the first bomb you have to place relatively quickly. Gesellschaft using sword buffers to get herself on the right pixel. So with there are ways to like buffer your movement in addition to using select and start menus to try and move one frame at a time. Using the sword stops your movement instantly. So if you can manage to hit the sword and a direction at the same frame, you know exactly how many pixels you're moving. So what's nice for these runners is they did not take any extra damage. You can take up to 2 hearts of extra damage because there are these heart pots in the rooms before the mimics, and BluntBunny, still having full health, was able to use a sword beam and the crystal switch instead of having to menu to the boomerang. or anything else. Also, very nice total room cleanup for him. Unfortunately, Gesellschaft just barely gets hit by the spike, so she will not be able to use the sword beam on the switch. She will have to menu to something and then menu back. Blunt taking a hit on phrasing on the Helmasaur fight. Kind of scary for him, since he did not get the Sanctuary Heart. He has one fewer hit he can take in this fight due to Helmasaur's attacks while doing 2 hearts.
Yeah, he got a pretty nice pattern though. The fireballs is definitely the last thing that you want to see on this boss, especially in phase 2. Phase 1, he will only do 1 of 3 attacks, charging forward, swinging his tail, or doing the fireball attack. But phase 2, he combines his attacks. He'll move forward, and he'll blow fire, and he'll try to hit you with the tail. So phase 2 is definitely more dangerous, and having that little extra heart that Gesellschaft has, even though she did take that damage, if she would have entered this place with full hearts, she would have had that safety there.
So neither of the runners are holding the sword out when hammering Helmasaur's mask. And that is something that a lot of people will do for safety and just more control, making sure you're facing forward. She's kind of getting some scary fireball patterns here. Does manage to survive at the end.
Yeah, the reason why the sword out is slower is Link moves noticeably slower, but also that little sparkle animation at the end of the sword can also lag the game. So you're putting in slower movement and lag frames into the fight that add up to seconds overall. Albeit the hammer is a little bit more dangerous to just go in there, but there's a couple of spots where you can kind of aim and make sure that you get your hammer hits in there. But phase 2, the reason why we hold the sword out is it helps us get into a position where we can move Link close enough where the hammer will hit, because it'll increase the hitbox for it. But also, if Helmasaur charges at us before we get that hammer off, it'll knock Link back and kind of get you out of that danger zone.
Yeah, the scariest thing about phase 2 is that Helmasaur gains the ability to do a tail swipe and spit out a fireball at the same time, which he cannot do in phase 1. He has to do one or the other.
Yeah, basically eliminating your area of movement. But there's a good trick that you can do with that. There's a way to manipulate the tail. I believe it's on the 3rd swing, whichever way, like more left or more right, that Link is positioned, the tail will swing that direction. Likewise, the fireballs always explode in a clockwise timing. So if you find out which one explodes first, you can anticipate the next 2 explosions.
Yeah, that's all stuff that's really good to know, and it's stuff that you pick up through a lot of experience playing the game. So that goes a long way towards surviving the tougher boss fights. Speedrunning this game is it can be harrowing at times, because to go as fast as possible,
definitely a workout.
like you don't want to pick up too much stuff out of your way if you're going for a high level time. And if you're down a few hearts, like ideally you want to be able to run with what you have and not be picking up extra heart pots and bombs, arrows, things like that.
Yeah, everything that we have in this run is pretty carefully managed. Our bomb counts, our arrow counts, our rupee counts. It's all kind of like utilized throughout the run. Sometimes having extra bombs in your way, like getting extra bomb drops, can help with safeties. I believe right now they are over the bomb count that they would normally need to be at. But, I mean, that's definitely less for them to worry about, because they have to use 1 bomb in order to get the ice rod. They need to use 2 bombs, 3 bombs actually, in Ice Palace, and then 1 bomb in Mire, until recently with the new fire rod tech that they can utilize. They hit that switch and skip that room entirely.
Yeah, even now there are still pretty crazy things being found in the game, and that's a very interesting new trick that I know both of the runners will go for, and we'll have to explain that when the time comes.
Yeah,
but right
even
now,
knowing that trick, I still wouldn't go into Mire without a bomb.
Yeah, that's true. It's rather volatile. You can kind of dispel the effects of it if you mess up and leave yourself unable to continue in the dungeon if you don't have a bomb. So both the runners have been making their rounds through the overworld to get the shovel, get the flute, and go into Thieves Town. Thieves Town having the Titan Smith, which will allow us to have much more accessibility in the overworld, and also grab the Tempered Sword, which is essentially doubles the damage of the sword and saves a lot of time on future enemies and bosses.
As far as like tricks go and like movement in this dungeon, I'd say it's probably one of my favorite ones to kind of go into. There's a lot of dashing, a lot of kind of reading enemies and like kind of beating the clock on a lot of their attacks. The red horse heads right there are the room that Gesellschaft just passed. Sometimes they can shoot a fireball and you might get hit by it. Sometimes the frame rule will save you where you just kind of go through it and Link doesn't get hit. Or just kind of like beating the clock of like these little fire snakes and fire barrows and Patrick stars. Coming up right now is the famous Hellway. See if Gesellschaft gets it. Oh, no, not quite. But she did have favorable movement of the Patrick stars to be able to, if she did land on that pixel, to just dash on through.
Yeah, so I guess sort of like the cactus dash, you have to stop your dash on a specific frame to end up in a position to dash down the center of the hallway. If you're even one pixel off to the side, you will hit a spike on either side. I guess the difference here is you can overshoot and not get hit. You just won't be able to dash through all the spikes, and that's what happened to her.
Yeah, there's a couple of different alternative strategies to get through there. Even if you were to get the God Pixel, as it's called, and be able to dash through there, the Patrick Star is moving south. You're not going to be able to get it. But there's a couple of backup strats that you can do where you can use damage boosts on the spikes, which do only 1 heart of damage compared to the 2 hearts or more that can be pretty much taken from you from any of the enemies here. Utilizing the damage boost to move yourself up, and then that way you can still get kind of sort of a dash off to finish that hallway with little to no damage taken. We kind of missed the fight with BluntBunny, but what he did is there's a way to kind of turn this fight into only like very trivial fight, and it's all about manipulating the damage and getting hit or those hits in there accurately. So we want to get those 3 sword pokes in there in the first phase. Second phase, he'll always go, or Blind will always go to the right first. That way you can get your slashes in there, and you don't want Blind to go too far to the left, because that will allow you to get those final 3 hits on there without taking any damage whatsoever. I'm sure that Gesellschaft is going to be able to get that same kind of action in there, but sometimes things go wrong, and but you know, if you can get phase 1 and phase 2 down really quickly, phase 3 is still very trivial.
Yeah, it's not quite as bad if you mess up phase 3 because it's the end of the fight anyways. But essentially, if you hit Blind on the first frame possible each time, each time he's vulnerable, his patterns don't have any room to diverge into different things happening. So the fight will always play out the same if you do all the hits as soon as possible. Blunt showing us that you can actually talk to the frog here from a little bit north of where he is, so you can save a bit of time by just picking up the top rock and not moving further down. And he's going to pick up the Tempered Sword right now. Well worth the 10 rupees, but more importantly, the time spent to get it. So interesting thing is the low percent NMG category of this game. The main difference in it is that you do not get the tempered sword, and a very good run of it will actually enter the Ganon fight before a very good any percent run would, and the entire difference plus a lot more is made up on the Ganon fight. BluntBunny going for a defense dash in Village of Outcasts. That particular one is pixel perfect. So he needs to move left for exactly 1 frame after the screen transition before dashing up. Some of the other ones, there's one west of Hyrule Castle on your way to Aghanim's Tower that is a lot more lenient because of the way that the slope sets you up, but this one is frame perfect. Pixel perfect, I should say. Actually, either or work. Now Blunt is going into the Stuck on Me room. This room can be really frustrating, but he deals with it very nicely. You want to manipulate the mummy's movements, just knowing that they'll always move in your... And sometimes that works out very well. Sometimes you have to change how you interact with the statue. Gesellschaft also getting the fence dash, by the way.
Yeah,
but like sometimes you have to adjust for where they are. You might have to abandon your pushing a bit because they're going to hit you, and then go on the other side and pull it, which is a bit slower.
Yeah, if you're really afraid of that room, 2 quick boomerangs will take care of them long enough for you to get that statue pulled, but it does take a little bit of time to set that up, and you may accidentally set yourself up for a quick grab from that wall master.
Yeah, if you aren't quite fast enough in that room, then you will have to waste time dodging that. Just kind of compounds your time loss. So we saw BluntBunny get the fire rod by doing a bomb jump to the big chest, and then walk into the hole afterwards. Not only is walking to the hole the fastest way to leave the room, but it also gives you invincibility frames that you can use to walk through the ropa on the overrolled, which lets you have faster overrolled movement as well.
Good execution of that mummy hellway there from Blunt.
He's also going to slash the Gibdo into the spike.
Swag hover from Giselle here.
I have never rolled my eyes harder.
Not a fan of the hover?
It's impractical in some places. Blunt with a very nice Mothula fight, using some poke dashes to ensure he doesn't push Mothula into the spikes. Mothula is actually immune to the damage class that spikes deal, and they deal the same damage as sword level 4. So I talked earlier about how he slashed the Gibdo into the spike, and that actually did twice the damage that his tempered sword normally would, because the spike actually overwrote his sword damage. But Mothula is set to not take any damage from that damage class, which means that actually if you slash him into spikes, the spike damage will overwrite your sword slash with a 0. Makes the spike frustrating. The poke dashes are kind of a way to get around that.
There's a couple of instances where the damage overriding is not beneficial for you. Instance one is what we talked about here with Moth, but another one that's not really noticed all that much is Landmo. If you fire an arrow really close to Landmo and do a sword slash, it'll do the sword slash damage, which will override the arrow damage, which is in all cases concerned, the arrow does way more to Landmo than the sword does.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because like this game is so wonky that the damage force that comes after actually overwrites the one that came before. and cancels it out when that kind of logically doesn't make sense. But that's just how the game works. So BluntBunny, on his way to Quake and Zora in the overworld, did a strat where he attempted to do a strat where you can turn and block that Moblin spear when you're setting up your dash to the right. Unfortunately, failed to do that, and it did hit him. But it's a strat that we love to kind of show off.
Bush though, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, that's pretty fortunate. That bush, I believe, is a 50% chance to drop a heart. So he also, you'll see runners bonk on that wall before picking up the quick medallion, and they don't do that for fun, although it is kind of fun to do that. They do it to set up a phenomenon called a quick warp, which almost every time the runners take a mirror warp, they are mindful of this. But on certain pixels in the x-axis of the camera position, for whatever reason, the warp animation is 34 frames faster, which is about half a second. There's some ways to set this up. There's some visual cues that people pay attention to, but that's a really easy one.
Yeah, there's a lot of different mirror warps that you do in this game, and if you manage to get yourself all of the quick warps, you're saving upwards of about 3 seconds across the entire run.
I would also like to go back and point out that both runners had a really good modular fight. I think Gesellschaft was actually a little bit faster. Sometimes the luck for it just works out that way. But the strat that they did to open the fight actually results in a double hit because you hold your sword out, do a poke dash, and the dash, like you get a poke dash hit in, but when you dash into the block, you also get a dash hit in, so it counts as a double hit, essentially. You can't do a spin attack to get double damage because that does class 4, which is going to be 0.
Yeah, but you really only use the spin on low percent, as Elm talked about a little bit earlier. It's faster to get the spin in there with the Master Sword.
Yeah, it's like strats in this game are very situational depending on what your actual arsenal is. But this category being the most popular, kind of the most standard strats are developed for this category, like for Tempered Sword normally, and then other strats are based off that, adjusted slightly when it comes to things like low percent or 100% or glitch categories or whatnot.
As far as difficulty goes, I'd have to say No Major Glitches is probably the easiest one to jump into, since the any percent means that you can complete the game really at any percent. So if you want to take any additional safeties, bottle, net, powder, stuff like that, half magic, you can do that, and you can still get a good time in this game. Obviously, as you drop more safeties, your time will also plummet, and your execution of the game too will also enhance. But glitch categories probably overall are both fun to play and visually fun to watch, because there are some really kooky glitches in this game.
Yeah, a lot of them are pretty intimidating, which is one reason that NMG is so popular. But I'm kind of hoping to see certain glitch categories, like particularly all dungeons. I think would be a good candidate for some more exposure in a future tournament.
All Dungeons is so fun, but the problem that a lot of people have with All Dungeons is that about 60 to 70% of the run way through, there is a lot of dangers of soft locks from when you do mirror wraps and the placements of the pixels that you clip into. You can run yourself into a spot where you have to save and quit out.
Gesellschaft doing some last-minute adjustments, last second rather, to get that Ice Palace bomb jump on the right pixel. BluntBunny first to the cold stare fight and does not manage to quarter them correctly. This is very scary for him because the eyeballs do 4 hearts of damage, and the ice blocks dropping from the ceiling do 2. And those randomly split in either cardinal or diagonal directions, so don't quite know where they're going to go.
Yeah, I got nervous for both of our runners here. Yeah, nervous for different reasons. Gesellschaft missing that. If she would have missed that bomb jump, she has extra bombs because she did the hover in Skull Woods. So doing that, she saved an extra bomb, so she would have had that along the way. There's other bombs that she can pick up, but they are out of the way as far as the run is concerned. And then BluntBunny, if you take a death at Cold Stare, it's probably one of the worst deaths in the game. Not only does it reset you back at the beginning of the dungeon, but you are 100% out of magic.
Yes, and you do need a full magic bar to even start this fight. Gesellschaft almost getting the strat she's going for, a pretty advanced strat. I believe it was the double poke dash into spin, or into double spin.
I believe we only saw one poke, but it's still tough to even to do the one poke into getting Cold Stare into that corner, because more commonly you'll see a 6-slash kind of combination where you get yourself in that spot and then you slash them over, and then you line link up on a spot where you can hit Cold Stare and it will continue to push all the puffs into the top right corner. The double poke can have some trouble because depending on where you poke Cold Stare, you might poke Cold Stare a little bit too far south of that corner, and you might actually, if you don't hold your dash long enough, lose the sword charge, which would basically make you have to adjust really quickly, and you won't get the 6-slash off as easily, and just problems will incur as they go along.
Yeah, you have to hold your dash for at least 10 frames out of the 30 that it takes to dash to be able to get that, to keep holding your sword out. So if suddenly your sword isn't out anymore, you're in a lot of trouble, because then they can just steamroll over you. You're defenseless. But both these runners do take pride in the finer optimizations. So
yeah, and the reason why we say it's so dangerous is we did a major sequence break in Ice Palace by pretty much bypassing half of the dungeon and skipping the big chest, which has blue mail in it. Blue mail would have reduced Cold Stare's damage down to 2 hearts and the icicles down to 1. So Cold Stare doing 4 hearts of damage to you when you only can take like 2 hits from it without being in a critical range, plus all the damage that you take in the dungeon. Anyway, it's really tough, and the only other dungeon that you'll see this kind of happen where you won't have a lot of health to kind of remanage is Mire.
Yeah, and Turtle Rock's very damaging too, of course. You expect it to have the blue mail for that. It actually, blue mail, Cold Stare hits do 3 damage, 3 hearts of damage with blue mail. Generally, blue mail cuts your damage taken down to 75%, but that's not really a hard rule. It's actually literally a different value for every enemy in a giant lookup table.
Yeah, it's part of the reason why in Escape you can get hit by rats and bats a couple of times, even though that you have 3 hearts, and you kind of get an idea that they do half a heart of damage, but they really only do about a quarter.
All right, so both runners in Swamp, and actually the sync is really funny here because they filled 2 different trenches at the exact same time, and they were pretty much mirror images of each other.
Now, Swamp Palace is the second dungeon that you're supposed to do, or at least what the game wants you to do, but we come here much later with pretty overpowered. We come here with the Tempered Sword, whereas you would normally have the Master Sword, but a lot of the enemies here, even with the Master Sword, would take about 2 or more hits to kill. So being able to have the Tempered Sword out and defeating these enemies, specifically when we get to the boss Argus, being able to destroy the puffs with 1 instead of 2 slashes, makes this dungeon much quicker to get through. But I mean, it's it's dangerous because there's a lot of little enemies and they do like 1 heart, and you're slowed down because you're in the water, and the skimmers, they like to move pretty fast. There's jellies, fire bars. There's a lot of little things that you'll get pinged on, and you can actually end up coming into Argus at a very dangerous health level.
Yeah, Swamp kind of opens the floodgates to getting damaged by little things like that.
I see what you did there. The most annoying part about this dungeon is if you've ever seen anybody run a 1-hit KO, this is probably the worst dungeon for any of the runners in a 1-hit KO kind of a situation, because there is a room, sometimes called the Michael Phelps room, where you're just basically swimming right before you get to Argus, and it's incredibly hard to dodge the little water skimmer.
Blunt doing 2 sword slashes before dashing upwards in that room. Just because he knows that the 2 sword slashes take the exact amount of time that he needs to wait out the jellies flashing. So like the amount of thought that has been put into this game, the amount of knowledge is crazy for everyone to know things like that.
Yeah, there are some instances in certain rooms. You actually kind of see it in like Thieves Town. Much in the similar way that door dashes work, you can actually kill an enemy that is sparking, like in Thieves Town, without actually getting hit and damaged by it. So there's a little bit of like a frame roll kind of thing that you can do, but more consistently is you want to do those 2 slashes. There's a lot of different things that you can do, and high caliber runners are ready and prepared and practiced for a great many different RNGs that each individual room can give them.
Yeah, BluntBunny getting an insanely good Argus fight, got the quick kills on both phases. The first phase being much more difficult. I don't have a lot of experience with that, so would you like to explain that?
Yeah, I've practiced it before. It's a really difficult trick because not only do you have to, it's awkward to hold your sword out and get that item dash, but after you get that item dash, you need to have a rhythmic use of the hook shot in order to do the damage. Now, the way that it works is that normally sword pokes only do 1 sword level down. Actually, no, they don't do 1 sword level down. They do a flat 1, I believe.
No, they do 1 level down.
Okay, then I was right, sorry. Anyway, the way that it works is that when you're in the item dash state, it still thinks that you are dashing, much similar to how spin speed works, and it does the full sword damage when you pull them in with the hook shot. It's much easier to get the second phase quick kill that Gesellschaft got here, because you just have to position yourself at the lower wall, and then as Argus is falling down, you need to get 2 quick fire rod shots off and then release your sword spin in order to get that 1 phase, or that 1 cycle phase 2.
All right, so we talked about hookshot being another method of getting super speed earlier, and BluntBunny showing us how that works. So if you do an item dash with a hookshot, you enter super speed state, just like if you had done a spin dash. The other thing that this lets you do is you can climb stairs faster. There are a couple ways to do it, but the way that is done here occurs if you do if you enter super speed with your sword out, which like you can't do with the spin dash because you used your sword for it. So when you do hook dash on the stairs, you're able to climb up the stairs at walking speed.
There's another way that you can kind of do it too. You will only really see it in 100% runs because you'll have the bombs by then. But when you're on your way up here just for Hera, you can actually drop a bomb and pick it up while you're in spin speed, and you'll climb the stairs much in the same way that a sword climb is. But it kind of sucks because you have to throw the bomb before you take damage. But it can give you a little bit of extra seconds and frames getting into the dungeon.
Yeah, you can also do it with the Cane of Samaria block, but since Samaria is such a late item, that doesn't come into play too much. So BluntBunny, starting to set up the new trick, which I like the name Fire Rod Entanglement, but I think people are calling it different things. I think some people are calling it like Spooky Action Fire Rod or something. But he, after he floated to Mire, he grabbed the rock from the bottom, which is slightly unoptimal. But what that did is it let the duck leave the screen at a different point than normal. When it leaves the screen, it sets a variable that's used for altitude, and this altitude variable is used for, it's used by a few different things. It's used by the duck. It's also used by bombs in Samaria, because you can pick them up and throw them, and it kind of adjusts where their effects occur on the y-axis, because the game kind of has to simulate it being in the air in a two-dimensional game. But for whatever reason, the Fire Rod also makes use of the altitude value, and it also doesn't initialize it properly, so it kind of uses whatever was last set up for it. So that means that the runners, if they set this up correctly, they'll be able to shoot things with the Fire Rod and have the area of effect actually hit things that are a number of pixels above where they shoot.
Yeah, 2018, what a year when the duck sets the variable.
They do have to be careful later in the Mire basement. So one thing that they're going to have to make sure to do is when they get the Cane of Samaria, they have to use it to hold down a switch in the first room in the Mire basement. When they do this, you'll see them actually kick up dust before placing the cane block. And what that does is there are multiple different slots in the memory that the altitude variable can be set for when these objects come into play. The kicking up dust actually reserves kind of like it takes up the slot that's currently has the altitude variable that the duck has stored, forces the Samaria block to use a different one, so that it doesn't overwrite the altitude value that we set with the duck already. If you didn't kick up dust when placing the Samaria block, it would just overwrite it, and then the Fire Rod entanglement would not work anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy all the things you have to do in order to maintain that stored variable. Normally, this is like something that you would like hear and see for tech for like RPGs and stuff like that. But it's kind of crazy that like, you know, stuff like this is still being found and discovered for a game as old as this and a game that's been run as long as this has.
All right, so we're going to see the effects of this right now on BluntBunny's screen. He's going to shoot the Fire Rod at this spike, and the Fire Rod displacement is actually going to hit the crystal switch at the top of the screen. In the next screen, he's going to shoot an anti-fairy across the room, and that's actually going to hit the crystal switch that's behind the bombable wall, skipping 2 entire door transitions. Also uses it for the 3rd time in the following room to hit the crystal switch at the top. The saves, I have heard, 11 seconds at this point. All right, so Gesellschaft. One thing people are pointing out that she did earlier was she did a bit of a different strat, lighting the torches, the Mire area, for the big key. Where she actually, normally what people do is, for the first 3 torches, they push a block and shoot a Fire Rod through it, because the block kind of doesn't exist while it's being pushed. But what she did for the fourth torch is instead of walking around the bottom, which is what a lot of people do, and that's more to dodge the wizards, I suppose. But there's only there's sort of half a tile of rail at the top of the room that you can, I believe, squeeze a shot through. Both of them with really clean Vitreous fights as well. Just getting right in there with the spin attacks, trying to hit the eyes as many times as possible. Each eyeball, I believe, requires 3 spin attack hits to die from the Tempered Sword. And some of those are going to be double hits.
Yeah, the cool thing about this game is that you can still have your sword out and take damage as long as you're not being run into. So if you take environmental damage, which is what the ground is, you can still maintain your sword out, although I don't believe that this works on spikes.
I'm actually not sure. I never thought about it. That may be the case.
So yeah, if it doesn't work on spikes, then it's a really unique environmental damage that you're able to take and still maintain your sword out.
BluntBunny activating the Quake Medallion to open Turtle Rock from about as far away as you can get away with. He also is probably going to go for the... No, maybe not. One thing you can go for there is called the Medallion Dash. So similarly to the hookshot, actually, if you use a medallion and dash at the same time, it gives you the super speed state, just like using a hook dash does. If you're really good, you can actually get the speed off the stairs and jump off the front ledge quicker. But even if you don't manage to do that or don't want to go for it, you still have the dash state, which gives you the automatic ledge hop. BluntBunny taking a hit in the roll room on the way in, which you do not want to take that hit. Optimally for speed, you want to take the hit on the way out. So because he took the hit on the way in, that roller does 3 hearts of damage. Not really in a comfortable position to be taking the hit out, so he's going to mirror. And I believe mirroring is about 5 seconds slower than taking the roller hit on the way out.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's interesting that what we look for when we're trying to get that speed out of the room and hit the roller is he had a good placement and a good time in the room in order to get that roller action, but just unfortunately taking that first hit is what really kind of ruined that aspect for him.
I don't expect Gesellschaft is going to mirror out unless she also makes the same mistake here.
Yeah, I think we're still waiting on the prize pack for BluntBunny here. I don't think he got it in the first one.
Yeah, he did not. So he still has a fairy in store for him. And there it is. And he's actually doubling back for it. So the way he was trying to do that room was you can set up a key dash for that door with a laser on it. And as long as you're... you have to be in kind of a specific position, because if you're dead on with the door, centered with it, that laser is going to hit you. So you have to be kind of off to the side. It's a really neat optimization, but he did choose to abandon it for the fairy. And there's so much other stuff going on in the room that can't really go for it at that point. Gesell gets some weird RNG in the chain jump room and ends up going for a less common strategy, placing a cane block in between the 2 switches. And you want to place it unevenly between the 2 switches so that the 2 times that it hits the switches are desynced, which gives you enough time to stand inside the peg and push the block to spawn the switch, or spawn the chest, excuse me.
Yeah, and then it's also important because you want to manipulate the chain chomps in the direction that they're moving, because they can still get in the way of the Samaria block that you place there. So By placing it both unevenly and then walking along the far left wall, both the chain chomps will attack to the left towards Link, and that gives your Samaria block free pass to hit both of those switches.
All right, so to finish off this scary dungeon. Oh wow, that was heart stopped for a second there.
Nice save though.
Yeah. So went for we call this the laser skip. When you're on the bridge paths where the lasers are, you aren't going to get hit by the laser unless you're centered in a path, which is only going to be when you're between both of the railings. So if you can avoid that for as long as possible and dash at the right time,
yeah, you got to get through the middle
laser.
part of the laser, because only the beginning and ending part of the laser will actually damage Link. Just all that fluff in the middle is just purely for show, and that's pretty much what we bypass.
I didn't think that the tail end of the laser did anything, but I might be wrong. Alright, beautiful Trinix fight from BluntBunny. On the second phase, doing the double spin, and then using a menu buffer to hookshot to make sure that he's got the slash set up correctly. And he's going to use the hookshot for a hook dash out of Turtle Rock and a sword climb into Ganon's tower right after. The backdoor Trinix strat that we see the runners doing is you can stun and start hitting heads. Basically, as soon as they start to move, they do not have to extend fully. And doing this lets you cut out one cycle of the main neck extending, which saves time. So we're being told that Gesellschaft is actually about a minute ahead of PB pace, which actually is not that surprising. She's had quite a decent run, not the cleanest in some places, but her PB of 130.02 was in her last tournament match, I believe, against JSR, and that was quite a while ago, back in group stage. So she's been practicing a lot, and personally, I know she doesn't favor doing runs too often, so that's pretty ripe recipe for getting a significant PB like this. BluntBunny actually having just PB'd by 30 seconds prior to this race as well. Some of that being due to the new techniques in Mire, but a large portion of that was beyond the amount of time that saves, of course.
Alright, in our final dungeon.
Footwork. Go ahead.
All I'm gonna say is our final dungeon is G Tower, which is it's pretty tough. I mean, you're coming in here with a lot of health, but a lot of things here will do just equally as much damage to you to like really lower your health. And specifically, the gauntlet is probably the most troublesome. The worst part about this entire dungeon is that it leads right into Ganon, but there is no health refill. So managing your health throughout this entire dungeon and then lining yourself up to be successful in the Ganon fight is a bit of a chain of itself of just like tough movement and good execution. So We're going to see a lot of just like tech that we've learned throughout this entire run and utilized, and pretty much just demonstrated for us all in one dungeon.
Yeah, I've heard the Ganon's Tower described as like the final exam of the run, so to speak. Okay, Blunt going into the 2 Mimics rooms. Very clean work on the first room. These rooms are really difficult to optimize. You want to manipulate the Mimics into the position where you can shoot them and not push them far away from you. And one of the ways to do that is to, like, basically, the Mimics respond to D-pad inputs, but they it doesn't matter whether Link is actually moving. So if you do things to stall Link's movement, like dash buffers, sword slashes, the like, you can get them to move that way that you want.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you can do things like you can fire the bow and you still have a couple of frames where you can get a D-pad input that won't actually move Link, but it will still move the Mimics. Really nice Ice Armormost fight from both of our runners here. Blunt's making his way through the gauntlet here. And Giselle's not that far behind. If I'm not mistaken, she's still like within minutes of Blunt, or within a minute. Sorry.
It's very impressive to see from a 130 player versus a 124. But like you see this more often from the lower ended. That's not a great way to say it. The runners with slower PBs, you'll see this stuff more often. Going for the bow dash, which is very consistent strat for the Crystal Switch room. Sorry, I got off track. The point I was trying to make was that you can see this sometimes in runners with slower PBs, in that they have a lot more room to improve outside of doing runs, and they haven't quite always grinded, so they can make these big improvements like this, whereas it's much more difficult for a 124 player to make this kind of stride. I actually thought she was going to go for the Gauntlet 3 dash between the spikes. I was going to be really upset.
So Giselle's having a little bit of trouble here with her health, but there's still a couple of hearts along the way that she can pick up that will bring her back up. There's a heart pot right in this room after that, and then there's another one in the last or second to last small chest room that BluntBunny just passed.
The Wizards are actually quite good at dropping hearts as well. BluntBunny's setting up Dora Dash. Okay, I guess not. Never mind. He didn't do the Dora Dash in Swamp either, I noticed. But he is the first into the Aga 2 fight. Aghanim 2, also called Geometry Wizard by some, gets a nice triple at the start of the fight. So a lot of this fight is random, but it's also kind of like
yeah, the copies will always give you the yellow orb. It's just a matter of like positioning. The real one is the one that you want to hit, and that's the one that stands out the most. But he does have the 50-50 ratio. So just like the original fight, the first one that he will throw is always a yellow orb. So getting at least 2 is really good. But if you can get that 3, it lines up the possibility of a twofer on it, which is the most optimal to get. But 3 is still a really good one to shoot for a good time.
Well, like the RNG that BluntBunny got, it was not possible for him to get a 2-cycle. He did the absolute best that he could have, and he would have gotten a 2-cycle had he gotten the correct RNG.
Yeah, because the blue ball RNG was really unfortunate.
So Gesell got quite a bit of hearts, back up to 7.5, which is around where Blunt is sitting at for the Ganon fight.
Yeah, I was really lucky. She got a lot of heart drops from those Wiz Robes.
I'm not sure if I must have missed something. Blunt missed one of the 1-cycles in one of the phases. I'm not sure which one.
Phase 2, I believe. He's been a little bit careful because still, you know, these bats, the bats in phase 2 do a lot more damage than the ones that cover the ground or the fire ones that he throws in the last phase. But if he's watching the run, then he knows how close she is behind him, and you know doesn't want to give up any ground.
All right, so he's going into phase 4. He's going to light that left torch before the right one has a chance to go out. That activates something called the torch glitch, wherein the right torch never goes out, and it makes killing Ganon without the silver arrows much more fast and manageable. So if he lights the left torch at the correct time, he can get up to 3 spin attacks per phase. You want to spin attack as Ganon begins to teleport, otherwise you will just freeze him and prepare him for a silver arrow hit, which you do not have here. Alright, and takes him down. Very clean fight in phase 4. And he has finished with a time of 1:26.17. GG to BluntBunny. He will be moving on to round 3. Of brackets.
Nice double
meanwhile,
spin
we
in
have,
there.
yeah, we have Gesell going for the dash strat for Ganon phase 2.
Be careful.
Yeah, one of these fire bat hits will kill her at this point, but I think she's out of phase 2 at this point. She did not hit Ganon enough times in phase 2 with dashes, but the strat that she used, if you're practiced at it, it's less scary than it seems. The inside of the ring is actually, it gives you a pretty good way to choreograph dodging the bats. The way that she set up her spin attack at the end of phase 3 actually gets a hit that counts towards phase 4. So she actually manages to get 2 hits in before getting Torch Glitch, which is really good. She's also releasing the spins pretty much as early as she can. Ganon's vulnerability ends up becoming active well into the frame window of the spin attack. This gives her as much time as possible to move around and set up the next spin attack after.
So, I mean, I gotta say this. Amazing run from BluntBunny, but an amazing PB for Gesellschaft here. Insane. Cutting. She was a 130 runner. Now she's a 128. She completely skipped 129, and she's gonna be a 127 runner here because the time that she died to Ganon makes her pretty much like if she can do another run on this line and get to here without dying, amazing run.
All right, and we do have BluntBunny will be joining us in a little bit for an interview. All right, BluntBunny, GG. How are you feeling?
Not too bad. I guess it could have been worse. I didn't die, so that was cool.
Yeah.
Looks like Giselle had a pretty good run. Sucks that she died to Ganon, because I guess that would have been a very low 127.
Yeah, her run was pretty insane otherwise, but it also like shows how much practice she's put in since her last tournament race. But yeah, 126, like just being able to pull off low 126s as like your kind of average, like not too bad, not too good run, I think is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I made a lot of really silly mistakes, stuff that I don't usually do in runs, but it was fine, I guess. I knew if I would have died, I could have probably lost the race, actually, because she was so close. She was in the same dungeon as me, like, every segment, so you could put up a good fight.
So, also, congratulations on your PB prior to this race. Was that the run directly before you raced this?
Yeah, it was just supposed to be a warm-up run, and it was an insane run. Pretty good.
That's pretty crazy. Like, I imagine some of that was from the Meyer time save, but clearly not all of it was, because that was a huge cut.
Yeah, the Meyer stuff definitely helped, for sure, but that would have been a PB without it, which is nice. Still, thanks, I appreciate that.
All right, and we are also joined by Gesellschaft. GG on that 128 PB. Congratulations.
Oh my goodness, I was not feeling it. Like, my voice is like completely shot. At the beginning, I was like going into it and just like I'm all over the place. And then like, oh no, like I guess my body started to like shut down a little bit from all the nerves and anxiety because it started to like level out a little bit.
That was a pretty insane run. Like, I don't know if you realize, but you were like on 126 face, like even up to Meyer.
It's my big thing is that I'm not very consistent because I don't do a lot of runs. Like, to me, I really love like execution and grinding, like the fun stuff, and then of course like Scudge yells at me because like, well, it doesn't actually, like he's really kind, but like he kind of gives me crap and he's like, do runs, and I'm like, but I want to do impractical stuff like going through the spikes in Gauntlet 3. It's so fun.
That type of practice seems to pay off in the long run, from what I can tell. I know Pink has practiced like that a lot, where he just did tons and tons of practice, and he's done like so few runs, but he has like the fourth best time.
Yeah, for me, like things like Cactus Dash and whatnot, like kind of the philosophy that I went into it is that there are a lot of things that you do want to be like pixel perfect that you're doing, and so while Cactus Dash, like I have like my own like little Cactus Dash like philosophy kind of thing, like Alminster kind of teased me a little bit about the other day, but it's the idea where yeah, the risk reward for it isn't very good, but if you're trying to like make sure that you're a strong player in that regard, like if I can do Cactus Dash, then what's stopping me from Fence Dash? What's stopping me from having, cutting my dashes really clean? Pumping and movement is really important. So not letting your dashes go too long is really important too, because if you're canceling early, you're losing like half a tile, and then half a tile, and infinitum until that time loss adds up. So
yeah, it definitely is, especially at a high level. A lot of that stuff matters more than you think. It's good to be in practice for most of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I love about this game. Like, it's like a really deep game. And of course, like at every level, you kind of look at rooms really differently. And, so like it's a really good game to grow with. I think it intimidates people. But like, and then
it's
of course,
inviting,
like,
that's for sure.
Uh-huh.
It looks inviting when you watch a run. Like it looks simple, but when you play it, it's like the opposite. Yeah,
like done stuff like in ice, like after, like before the Pengator room, stuff like dashing early, not having a clean dash, nudging like saves a frame. It's like, what? This game is stupid, but it's great. Like just like random things like that. I'm sorry, like my voice, like I was.
No,
like,
congrats! Like you were worried
going
about.
nuts the entire time.
Apparently, you were nervous. I'm surprised you played so well for being so nervous.
Well, thank you. I guess it's kind of like a rise to the challenge sort of thing. I think when I play normally, I get complacent because I'm like, well, if no one's watching me, then I don't have to care too much. And then if I am streaming, I'm constantly getting distracted. Like, not to get into a big tangent, but the whole reason I got into streaming in the first place is to help with anxiety issues. Like talking on the phone, talking in general, like just not, it wasn't really my thing. And like even just things like I'd have like a couple of drinks before I do a stream or at the beginning of a stream to like calm down to do the stream. And I just saw it as like something really therapeutic. And then Rando is really interesting, and it's actually what got me into speedrunning. I watched speedruns for many years. Like I think the first Link to the Past run I ever watched was Cypher, and I was content watching players like that because I'm like, well, I know if I worked really hard, I'm sure I could do that. But I'm happy for other people that they're putting in the hard work, and I just didn't really think too much of it. And then, of course, Rando opened the floodgates, and then I watched Fruitbat's tutorial, which kind of, got me started. I learned the speedrun to learn Rando, to learn the speedrun kind of a thing, and kind of leapfrog between the two. And no, yeah, just like I played this game as a kid and absolutely loved it, and it's a ton of fun, and yeah.
I really enjoyed like just your journey from, as you said, going from the beginnings of learning, of watching it, to playing the randomizer, to jumping into the speed run, and then getting this amazing time and just been working your butt off. It's been like amazing just to see your progress.
Thank you. It's like, honestly, it's a labor of love. Like going into it, time was never like PB, personal best is never an issue for me. It was the idea where I have fun playing, I want to have fun playing. And if I have fun playing and I keep improving, the times will come. It's kind of like the way I go into things is like, whatever I'm doing, I want to put work into it. I want to put my heart into it, the pride and the ethic into it. It's like, if I'm going to do something, I'm not just going to be like, well, I'll try not to be lazy about it. And so it's like, if I'm spending a lot of time with this game I really enjoy, then I want to get better. And so like, that's a big reason why I just didn't do runs. And like, there's like, you find a better way to do a room, and then you find a better way to do the same room, and then so on, and then different patterns and whatnot. And it's like,
yeah, I can definitely relate to that in terms of like picking up something and trying to give it your all instead of just, like you said, I guess being lazy or.
Yeah, like whatever your hand finds you to do it with all your might. And so it's like, I can't just jump into a game and like mash buttons and have fun. I really like the technical, the deeper aspect of things. It's, pretty important to me in that regard. And I came from fighting games, like professional fighting games. And so, that really helped me in terms of like mind games and meta and then tournament experience, even though it was like, first turn I went to, I was like actually shaking. It was really not good, but, and then just like the execution and things. So like in this game, I really like the execution. Like I really like the precise stuff. Like to me, that's where a lot of the fun is. And then just of course trying to push boundaries and see how far you can go. And that's why I'm willing to do things that aren't necessarily the most optimal, as long as I have fun and it's like something I enjoy. But I do try to balance the two, of course.
I think the like personal philosophy of how you approach a speedrun is really cool. It's like unique to every individual, but I know a lot of the top, like a lot of the top runners will share commonalities and that kind of thinking, because it's kind of partially what gets them to the top. It takes a lot of passion to do that, and I really like the tournaments because they're a good way to display the hard work that people have put into prior to them. Usually, even though some people have put in, some people have had years more of experience, and it shows. I don't know. It was a really great race to watch from both of you, seeing comparisons.
I'm not gonna lie. I had the race up to just keep track of the pace. If I would have died anywhere, you definitely would have won. unless it was like Ganon or something, because you had died to Ganon. But that's like how close it was. Like any death that I took would have been, you would have been able to take the win for sure. So I mean, that alone is impressive. So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a ton of fun. I was really looking forward to it, and like, I don't know, like I've even been like having dreams about the race, like just like looking forward to it, and of course stress and everything. But,
it's been a while since my last race too. I don't think I've had a race in like a month because I had to buy the first week, and then I did all my races super early in the before brackets.
Yeah, you actually had both had a bye in round one because Gesellschaft's opponent Ivan had issues with his PC, couldn't stream. Right. So it was actually kind of crazy it being the first tournament match for both of you for a long time, like maybe a month or so. Challenge is actually already updated. Shoutouts to our tournament admins. So BluntBunny, for round 3, you were against Walrus Prime. How are you feeling about that?
Walrus is a good player. He's actually another person that come a long way, and he's definitely capable of beating me if something bad happens. So it should be another impressive race, but he'll put up a good fight for sure.
Yeah, I see it as kind of a similar situation to this. Like he's made a lot of strides in this game.
Yeah, he wasn't even
known.
I don't think before the tournament. So
yeah, he's known for Mega Man X speedrunning as well.
Oh yeah, he's
very good at that game.
He's a god at that game.
So, that race should be a big day for you guys.
Nice one.
All right, so I think we can start wrapping up. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to get in? Any thoughts?
Congrats on your PB. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you. And well, I mean, congrats on your PB.
Yeah, thanks.
Big day.
Definitely a big day.
Yeah. But I guess is it okay if I do like a quick little self plug?
A quick little what?
Self plug. Like
a plug? Oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say that I'm gonna keep the stream going, and I'm gonna like immediately watch the stream back to like look and talk about it. So if people want to hang out, that's really cool. But past that, thank you everyone so much for the tournament. It was a lot of fun. Lots really stressful. I went from emulator to console during the middle of the tournament, in the Rondo tournament, doing the commentary, having fun with the commentary, and getting stressed with stress, and capture card not working. I got a new capture card, and like thinking my controller had ghost issues. And no, it's the converter doing its pulling thing, and then on console works fine. So no, I don't need new controllers, even though I got controllers. Like just like a lot of it, a lot of stress. But thank you all so much for the tournament, for the experience, for the commentators, everyone that showed their love and support, and you know, of course, to the machine, you know, all the cogs that went into making everything possible. Again, GG's to Mr. BluntBunny. I hope you do really well in the tournament. I mean, I want everyone to do well, since it's like, I mean, it's like a formality, but it's like I do want you to do well, obviously. But thank you, everyone, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you for participating. It's good shows from all of your races, really. So, if you'd like to see more from our runners, you can follow them at their Twitch channels there. They definitely deserve it. If you'd like to see other stuff on Speed Gaming, we have another NMG race ongoing right now on Speed Gaming 2, Greffrey versus ACMLM. That is about 45 minutes in. Also, if you're into Randomizer, we have Heo24 versus Chloe Prower on Speed Gaming 5 started just a few minutes ago, I believe. At 9 o'clock, we have Leslie Pro versus Catastrophe on Speed Gaming 1. And check speedgaming.org/schedule for further information on other days. There's a lot more on this channel besides A Link to the Past. We have 2 really large Link to the Past tournaments, one for Randa, one for NMG, going on. But that doesn't mean there aren't plenty of excellent other games like Hat in Time, newly started Mega Man 2 Game Boy tournament. So yeah, thanks to... Yeah, no problem. So thanks to Ninnies for joining me on commentary.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, man, it was a lot of fun.
I didn't have the sound on, but I had the stream up to go back and watch. I'm sure it was good commentary though.
I think it was alright.
Oh, you.
Well, thanks, guys. I guess I'll roll out of here.
Rolling out.
Rolling out.
Alright, have a good night, everyone.
Bye.